Hello and welcome to ThePrint. I'm Snehesh Alex Philip. Now you would be wondering that I'm standing on an L70 gun. Well, you're right and you're also wrong. What I'm standing on right now is the simulator for the L70 anti-aircraft gun. The same gun that came handy during Operation Sindoor. I, along with my video journalist Mohhamad Hammad, are here in Hyderabad visiting the facility of Zen Technologies, a company that was started in 1993 by two brothers and a friend, which has now grown to nearly 12,000 crore worth. As I stand here, several of my colleagues are traveling across the country to get you stories from the ground straight to you. And all of this comes at a cost. And hence, I ask you to subscribe to the print and be part of the print's growing family. Follow the instructions that you see on the screen and become a member of the print. Now, coming back to why am I here in Hyderabad at Zen Technologies? As I mentioned earlier, a company that what was started in 1993 by two brothers and a friend has now grown into one of India's leading private companies, which is into anti-drone systems as well as simulators. Now, this company in the last 1 year has done revenue worth 900 crores, of which rupees 300 crore actually came from exports. Yes, an Indian company is exporting to several countries in Africa, in the Middle East, and now also in the Southeast Asia region. The company has gone ahead and acquired a subsidiary in the US and is now focusing on both American and European markets. Over the next half an hour, we'll show you some of the technologies that the company has developed, the technologies that the company is working on, and of course, the technologies that came handy during Op Sindoor. I have with me Brigadier Adil Mahmood. He is the Vice President here in charge of projects. And as his designation suggests, he's an Army veteran. He actually served with a 16 cal and has also commanded the President's bodyguard, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, absolutely.
Welcome to the Prince, sir.
Thank you very much.
So, what is it that I see behind us? What is this?
So, as far as Zen is concerned, you're well aware that we are the leading supplier of realistic combat training solutions. So, the main training solution which we supply is what we call virtual simulators. What you are seeing here is the virtual simulator for all infantry weapons, which includes personal weapons as well as support weapons such as rocket launcher, medium machine gun, etc.
So, when you say simulators, I can see many of the rifles here, right? So, these are all based on the actual weapon system?
Yes, so actually we will use an exact replica of the actual weapon for the training which we impart. We can also use a service weapon. In case we use a service weapon, we have to do some modifications and we can use it in the virtual simulator.
Okay. So why, the Indian Army, while it has been using simulators for various systems, for example, the armor, the tanks and all, the infantry has now been picking it up. But simulator across the world, armies across the world have increasingly moved on to simulators. Why is that so?
That is mainly because it is very difficult to carry out 100% training with your service equipment. There is a factor of cost, there is a factor of the life of the equipment, there is a factor of the availability of the training infrastructure. So we can overcome all that by using simulators.
So these, while the Indian Army is a client for you, and I'm also told that the CAPFs have also ordered with you. In terms of exports, are foreign armies also buying these simulators from you?
Absolutely. Simulators are a requirement across the board. All, you can say, institutions, whether it is armed forces, police forces, paramilitary forces, all of them need to train. And training is the most important element. Training with the actual equipment has a lot of challenges, which is why they prefer to use simulators. And it is not only the Indian Army, all the foreign armies have this requirement. and we are able to go and meet that requirement to a host of foreign militaries. Okay, so what we have here, we have the AK-47, we have the AK-203, we have the 6 Snehesh, why don't you try one of them?
Okay. And this is the 6R.
Yeah, so this is the 6 you can try it. Please fire on target number 7.
Target number 7.
Yeah. So this is a grouping exercise where you have to get all the bullets as close to each other as possible. So don't change your aim. So that's excellent. So here the instructor has given you only 5 rounds, so only 5 rounds will fire.
Okay.
Though the magazine, which is filled with gas, has got the capacity same like the original magazine of 20 rounds or 30 as the case may be.
Yeah.
But the number of rounds are controlled by the instructor. So in all our simulators, the instructor station has been given the full wherewithal to get the maximum inputs about the training for all the arms and services. I can walk you through all
Let's
these
do that.
simulators.
Let's do that.
Okay, so let's start with the driving simulators. You will notice that the driving simulator will have the exact replica of the driver's compartment for the training.
Okay.
Every control which is there in the actual vehicle is there. We have a 6 degree of freedom motion platform. We have a screen in which you have all terrain, all weather, all road conditions and traffic conditions. And we have an instructor station where the instructor can set the level of the exercise based on the expertise of the driver.
So right now he's driving through it instead of driving an actual vehicle. He's first learning to drive on this
So it is
simulator.
not only a means of learning to drive, but whenever your deployment is changing, for example, you're going from desert to mountains, the drivers can practice the terrain they're going to face in advance.
And this gimmicks the terrain itself. So based on how the bumpy
Yeah,
or
so
how
it is
thin.
based on the virtual terrain. The motion platform will give the feeling based on the terrain over which the vehicle is driving.
So how helpful is it for a driver? What has been your feedback so far?
So this is an excellent method to train a driver. Any error which he does is getting recorded. Just for an example, if he changes a lane on a highway without showing the indicator, that will get recorded and will come as a feedback for the instructor and for the driver. So it will make the driver aware of the rules and the method of driving in all types of conditions, whether it is weather conditions like rain, snow, fog, whether it is traffic conditions, whether it is cross-country conditions. So next we will have a look at the tank simulators. The first amongst them is this crew gunnery simulator, where you have the interior of the turret of a T-90 tank in this case with the commander station and the gunner station exactly replicated. If you go inside that compartment which you see on the screen, you are able to get inside like in the cupolas of the driver oblique commander, and you will have the same environment as is faced by a gunner and commander in the tank.
So this is the simulator for the T-90 tanks. You're saying that the Indian Army is now using simulators also for the tank?
Yes, so they are using the simulators for T-90 and T-72, in fact all the tanks. So you are able to carry out all the training, basically driving training. I'll be showing you the driver simulator. And we have the gunnery training, because gunnery is one of the most important elements of training in the armored corps. So this was the fire. Now let us see what it looks like on the gunner side and the commander side. On the left we have the gunner side view, on the right we have the commander side view. Right now we have the gunner sitting. He is selecting a target and he is carrying out the complete drill.
So the targets
of
are
the firing.
one
So
is
there are a couple of targets here.
Yeah.
So he will he will select and engage a target. So there he has selected the ammunition and loaded it. And now he is selecting the target. He has fired the laser and got the range. And, and then he has fired the gun. So this is the example of the fire as seen by the instructor. He can also switch the type of sight he's using. In this case, he's got the thermal image sight for night sight. This is called white hot, and he will be firing on a target using the night sight. Okay, load. Loaded. So he's loading the ammunition, he's taking the aim, and now he'll fire. Okay, fire. So as you can see, the complete crew can be trained. The method of crew integration can be followed, which is then in the actual tank in the simulator. Now linked to this, we have the driving simulator. So let us move to the driving simulator.
Perfect.
So now we have moved on to the tank driving simulator. This particular model is for the T90 tank. If you have a look at the driver's compartment, which is made for the simulator, it is an exact replica of the driver's compartment of the actual tank with all the controls, switches, dials as in the actual tank. This is actually closed because we are in the demonstration center. It is open from front, but the back and the front will be closed. And once he is inside, it will be like he's sitting in the hull of a tank.
So viewer, as you can see on the screen, this is how cramped the space inside the T90 is. This is all that the driver of the tank gets in terms of space for him to operate.
So now we'll be having a look at a driver carrying out his training in the simulator. So he has started driving. The area on which he is driving, the view which the driver has, and the view of the commander, the instructor, is here. So here we have the driver's periscope view, and this is the instructor view. So we have, now you can see the simulator has going down the slope, and he's decided to take a stick and take a 360 degrees turn on the slope. So you can see the effect of the. So this was the effect of the motion platform. So next we'll be having a look at the integrated air defense combat simulator. Here we have a dome screen with a 7-meter diameter in which the complete scenario is projected. We have the different types of air defense guns. What you're seeing on your screen is the Zoo 23 mm cannon.
Something that was extensively used during Op Sindoor.
Correct, that's right. You can also replace it with any of the air defense guns. So now you'll be seeing the aircraft coming on the screen and the air defense gun engaging.
So what is an infantry support weapon system?
So the infantry support weapon are those weapons which are crew-served weapons which enhance the battlefield efficiency of the infantry. So everybody has their personal weapon. In addition, for the different types of targets, say tanks or area targets, we have support weapons such as the anti-tank guided missile, the 81mm mortar, the automatic grenade launcher, and the medium machine gun.
So what we're seeing first is the anti-tank guided missile simulator. Is this the Concourse that is there? Or?
Yes, so this is the anti-tank guided missile simulator for the Concourse missile. You are seeing a screen with the image. That is actually what is visible to the missile pilot in his eyepiece.
Okay.
In this particular case, the screen is not part of the simulator. That is only for us who are viewing it.
Okay.
It will be here inside the eyepiece. So
Okay.
that particular scenario is in the eyepiece, the missile pilot will use only the eyepiece to engage the target.
So there you go. So he's now adjusting the target, right? He's acquiring the target, and then he's going to fire. And this is actually how a soldier in real life situation would. As you can see on the screen, there is an enemy tank approaching, and he's right now acquiring the target, and very soon he's going to fire.
So this is a second generation missile, which implies you have to track till the target is hit.
Yeah, that's why he was still continuing to focus on
Yeah,
the
he
this
was
thing. This is a
tracking.
wired system.
It's a wired system.
Okay. Interesting, viewers, is that now the army has, of course, inducted the third generation ones, and it is not just used at tanks, but it's also been used at the LC also to target enemy positions.
Absolutely.
So now what do we have here? We have the medium machine gun
The
simulator.
medium machine gun simulator, where I will be just showing you exactly how they carry out a fire, what we call the fixed line fire. It's one of the practices.
Okay.
Please start.
So we're in a desert terrain, and now in a night mode. Brigadier, I'm standing in front of a container. I can see what is there. But before that, I want to ask you this question. Now, the army is using a lot of simulators, right? We saw the simulator for the small arms, the tanks, the grenade launchers, the mortar launchers. Has there been an increase in demand because of the Agniveer scheme? Because now, because of the Agniveer scheme, now the training modules have been shortened up, and there's a lot of emphasis on simulator.
Yes, absolutely. Because of the Agniveer scheme, we had to reduce the training period of the soldiers, that is, when they are recruits, uh, to make up for this
This
less
shorter,
time or
yeah.
this compressed time frame. We require greater reliance on simulators, because in case of simulators, you are able to make the soldier achieve the desired proficiency in much less time,
Okay.
because a lot of extra drills and methods, etc., are cut out. You don't need to go to a range, for example, to carry out the firing every day.
Okay.
So you will hone your skills on the simulator and then just go and get your tests done on the actual range. So you save a lot of time.
So, when you talk about ranges, one of the issues that the armed forces face is the lack, even though over the last few years, they've tried to increase the number of ranges, physical ranges, but then the ranges are not just enough, right? So, we are standing right now, which looks like a range. It looks like a tunnel. I can see some target there. What is it?
So what we have here is called a containerized tubular shooting range. As everyone is aware, that live firing is one of the most important elements of training. But you already mentioned that there are a lot of challenges as far as ranges are concerned. They're not always available. When available, they are oversubscribed. So we require very modern and technologically savvy replacements for the range. So here we have what we call a containerized tubular shooting range. It is fitted inside a standard 40 feet shipping container. It can be taken to the point of use. It is 100% safe, and you can use it in the most intense urban environment. It permits two trainees to fire all types of small arms to a range of 10 meters to 300 meters. So the range is depicted at 300 meters, but the system will calculate the ballistics and the trajectory of the ammunition for that particular weapon, and will give the result accordingly to the firer on the firing point equipment, which is located next to the fire.
These are some tremendous work that has been done by Zen Technology. What more are you going to show us
Yeah,
today?
so for example, this is a range inside a container. We have a similar range which is prefab. As you can see, it is called the CSAFR, Containerized Small Arms Firing Range. In that case, it is not in a container, but it is prefab, and it can be up to 6 lanes. In that case, we have a physical target between 0 to 25 meters, And the virtual targets will start from 25 meters to 2,200 meters.
Wow. So why should, for example, why should the army go for the CSF AFR rather than this?
No,
What's the
you see, this is basically mobile. You
yeah?
can take it to the point of use. But if you have got a fixed location where you require the range all the time at a particular spot, it makes more sense to use that because you can make it 6 lanes.
Okay.
So at a time, more people can fire. And you have physical targets also, which can be moved on pulleys from 0 to 25 meters. And you have the virtual targets beyond that.
So while the army has the rangers, the CAPS and the state polices will have a huge use of this because they don't get the kind of range that
Exactly.
is there.
You're absolutely right because this is very useful in built up area.
Okay.
Because many times most of the CAPFs and police forces are located inside urban areas.
Well, that's why you mentioned the international airport. So
Yeah.
now I'm connecting the dots here. I promised you that I'll showcase the systems that was used during Op Sindoor. And to carry forward the discussion, I have with me Mr. Ashok Atluri, the founder and the CEO of Zen Technologies. Welcome to the Print, sir.
Hi, thank you, Snehesh.
So, congratulations first. I saw the amazing work that you've been doing, and I was just amazed at the scope or the large scope of work that you've accomplished till now. So, for our viewers, how did this all start?
So we started in 1993. Me and my brother and another friend of his, three of us started. We were in cantonment area, and we used to interact with the armed forces a lot and army a lot. And one thing, we used to do odd jobs for them, but I used to say, we were keen to develop a product, not
Yeah.
exactly do services, because I think again we also had this feeling that we can do much more than just doing odd jobs for them. A product would require a long-term R&D and create it. So at that point in time, the ranges were very few, and there are no ranges being built, and that's why the range training suffered a lot. So the first product was a range replacement called Small Arms Training Simulator.
From those simulators, you've gone to the bigger simulators. Our viewers have already watched them, but now I want to talk about the anti-drone system.
Yeah.
How did this journey start for you?
So, we were 25 years in 2018, and we were saying that, we were number one in the world. We are continue to be number one in army simulators. And we were thinking, what is our next journey? So we thought we should diversify. Again, I think till you actually have dominated and can dominate a one field, no point diversifying in too many fields. So because we became number one in that, we started looking and we felt that the future would be electronic warfare. And then we identified a company called UTS, and we spoke to the very ex DRDO scientists. We said that these guys are really, really strong and capable. And and then we said that why don't we develop this anti-drone system
Yeah.
together? And we invested almost 4 or 5 years of R&D with them, and in 2022 23 we started actually selling the product.
You started actually selling the product. So correct me if I'm wrong, sir. During Op Sindoor, and this is what I've learned, that the Pakistanis were using both the indigenous drones as well as the Turkish drones, and the Turkish drones were jumping the bands at which they operate, right? And this came as a bit of a surprise, but I'm told that we had systems in place to counter that.
Yes.
And they literally fell down like mosquitoes.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So, where does your company come into play in this?
So we have been pitching that the government of India should probably go for wideband. From very early on, we were saying that commercial band drones are not what the enemies or the terrorists would use, because they would not be they would not be following the guidelines given by anyone. So we were saying that it should be wideband, and much before anybody even said that this kind of threats exist, we started identified the threats and started investing in the R&D to have a wideband, not just the 900, 2.4, 5.8 gigahertz. No. So we started doing it. Can we do from 400 to 6 gigahertz? Even though now we do 70 to 18 gigahertz. At this time, we are really
Wow,
expanding
okay.
the thing. So when we started pitching, so when and the government actually suddenly realized that this is a real threat, and when they floated the tender for that, we participated. We were a resultant single vendor. Nobody else qualified, and we supplied this.
So
Yeah,
when you started off, there was no requirement.
there was no
It was
requirement.
not the army or the air
No,
force
yeah.
came and asked you, boss, we need this. Can you make this for
No,
us?
it was actually self-generated. Yeah,
Huh.
self-generated. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Self-generated one is so when the so how did this help the armed forces during Op Sindoor?
So we know that during Op Sindoor, the Turkish, the Chinese drones, the war was more between China, Turkey, and India rather than
Yeah.
Pakistan. So there was a proxy war. So we were able to, actually we know that the drones were non-standard drones. They were flying in different frequencies, and our anti-drone system was able to block them exact at that point in time, and it was almost impenetrable wherever anti-drone system, the wideband anti-drone system was there.
So this is part of your anti-drone systems.
Yes.
If you could take our viewers about what is it that they are seeing on the screen, sir?
Yeah. So, this is typically this is the radar, this is the detector, and this is the jammer. So,
Okay.
this is the basic system that is there for, soft kill kind of a thing, where the drone is detected, and then, the radar validates the thing, and the jammer actually jams the communication between ground and the drone. What sometimes happens is, especially now, they have made the drones autonomous.
Yeah.
Where they they are GPS based, in which case we can use GPS spoofing. And sometimes now what has happened is they said, even GPS is not foolproof. They have an integrated AI based vision system which can see waypoints and which reach the destination. So the only thing to
Some of
neutralize.
the drones that the Pakistanis used were AI enabled.
Yeah,
as
they
well.
were AI enabled,
Yeah.
and for them, the only way to bring them down is by using a actual hard kill option like a Gatling gun, or a kamikaze drone, or a short missile kind of a thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if the jamming doesn't happen, if the spoofing doesn't happen, what is the next alternative that you have?
So it will be depending on the distance that is there. It could be the short range missiles,
This is a
short range missiles,
Okay.
and followed
this has
by.
been developed by you?
So we have collaborating with a partner, and we are developing this at this point in
Okay.
time. And these are the kamikaze drones that go and hit the drones. That is the second level of defense.
Huh.
And then as they keep coming closer, we actually are able to shoot it down and bring them down.
And these are all vehicle mounted.
They're all vehicle
systems.
mounted.
They're all
Absolutely vehicle mounted. Yes.
And you've been supplying it to the armed forces?
Yes, we have started supplying them to the armed forces.
Okay.
Yeah.
And last year I think your revenue was close to about 900 crores.
Yeah.
Of which 300 crores came from
Exports.
Exports.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's like a huge number, for an Indian company. I'm repeating this again: 900 crores of revenue, of which 300 crores came from exports. So, has these systems been exported till now?
Yeah, there was a combination of anti-drone systems and simulators in that export. Yeah.
Okay. So a combination of anti-drone systems and simulators.
Yes.
So, this anti-drone system is a very complex area that you are in, right?
Yes.
And simulation, of course, you had competition from Thales, Rheinmetall, Saab. You've beaten all of them. When it comes to anti-drone systems, how is the competition and what is the road ahead as far as your company is concerned?
So, I'll not identify companies as such, but definitely Israel, America, Europe, we are having competition. So, the product that we have sold were evaluated against the world's best, products, and they bought the anti-drone system from us. Even Army, we had, competition from Europe and other countries. They bought it from us. So, again, we are not playing a L1 game here. We are saying we may be kind of a thing, but what we say is, technically, what we are offering is so unique and so useful that money should not bother you. And so, so of course, we are also reasonably compared to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the point here is that we have everywhere where we're getting the orders, it's the technically that we are beating them and then getting the orders.
Then getting the orders. So now, as we are speaking, in just another matter of few more days, the budget is going to be out. What is your viewpoint of budget? What would you want as far as the defense budget is concerned?
I think the focus should be on the future technologies that are going to be there. I think we should not be stuck too much in the past. I don't know how much of the past technologies will be used in the future wars. So it should be very, very future oriented in the sense the government should say, listen, this is the direction in which the wars are going. It's going to be electronic warfare. It is going to be laser based. It is going to be microwave based. It's going to be simulation, and then they should allocate the funds to these things. So my view is that army knows in 5 years what are the probable
Yeah.
technologies that will dominate, and then what they should do is out of that they should identify 20% of the Pareto, which will have 80% impact on the war, and then say, boss, these are the things that we will focus on, and this is the futuristic technologies that for which it is reserved, and only for indigenous R&D Indian companies will be given this cannot be given to foreign companies. So if this happens, that we identify the technology preemptively and we start investing today, in 5 years I personally feel that we'll be number one in the world.
Okay. So, defense, when it comes to defense procurement, it's a very long, winded process. Now, you have the last time the DAP or the defense acquisition procedures came out was in 2020. Now, in the new fiscal, you would have a new DAP 2026. It is right now undergoing internal consultations. It will be put out for public consultation about 3 weeks. What would be your expectation, or what changes would you like to see in the procurement manual?
One thing is again a focus on IDDM, buy Indian IDDM category. That this is the most precious category, and a very, very serious effort to ensure that Indian IP, wherever it is there, is hunted down, brought out, and bought in and inducted into the company. Again, I'm taking this as real R&D companies. What happens is, I think it was in Israel famously it was said that if a Israeli company gets 60% capability versus a foreign company, they buy from Israeli company. Why? Because the money that goes in helps them in becoming number one in some time. So if that mentality is there, that we will buy only from Indian company with Indian IP, I think that will really set the path for that. So IDDM has to be nurtured, protected, and you taken to the next level. Second is, and somebody made a claim that IDDM, a lot of people are pretending. What I'm saying is make the punishment exemplary, blacklist them, disgorge the money that has been paid, blacklist their group companies, blacklist the directors of that company, so that people don't mess around with this category. This category has to be protected under all conditions. So that is one thing. The second is the focus on the future technologies. How do are you under this IDDM? Try the make two is there, make it
Yeah.
more imposing, and say these are the technologies that we are opening up for. Make into the funding is done by the industry itself. Identify those technologies and say this is what we want, and we are willing to fund for 3 years, 5 years. Don't say 2 years or 3 years, because these are long-term projects. And now we have this RDI fund.
Yeah.
So can you make a mix, a combination of these things and really go for a long-term R&D with a clear set milestone for that? Maybe have two companies as backup instead of one company. But this should be, DAP should be used and should be as an instrument to become number one in the Pareto technologies in the next 5 years.
And so, from your company perspective, while a significant portion of your revenue comes from exports, what is it that you're focusing on for future? And which are the markets that you're already in, and which are the markets that you're now looking at entering?
So we are very strong in Africa and CIS countries. We are currently looking at Middle East also. We are in a way we are there. So the Middle East and Southeast Asia are two new regions that we are focusing. Of course, we have set up a facility in US. I mean, we have a 100% subsidiary there. We are also trying to set up a manufacturing, etc. there.
In the US?
In the US.
Okay.
So that
And what is the subsidiary in the US? I was not aware of this.
So we have a fully owned subsidiary that we are trying to acquire US companies, and trying to build a local facility, because America is also focusing like India in make in America kind of thing. And then again, the final area of our focus would be Europe. With the EU deal being signed, there is some kind of opening up where they want Indian companies to come there. So we want to follow the process and start supplying to NATO countries also.
Start supplying to NATO countries. So when it comes to the exports, you mentioned that US is something that you are focusing on. So now, after anti-drone system, is there any new area that you want to get into?
So, one thing is we want to really complete the suite of the anti-drone electronic warfare in the sense that the, microwave-based, laser-based technologies to be
So that
integrated
is
into
something
the.
that you're
Yes,
focusing on.
absolutely, yeah.
So by when if I'm not mistaken, it's still under R&D.
Yeah, no, it is quite advanced. I think by this year we should be able to demonstrate to some of the customers.
To some of the
Yeah.
customers. And what is the range as far as these systems are concerned?
So, we are just working on that. The laser should be starting with about a kilometer or so, but eventually it
Okay.
will be much higher. And yeah, that is what we have in mind.
And is something that you're looking at as a export product also?
No, absolutely. This is meant for. So, the thing is, the government of India has been actually pushing us to export. They have been saying, listen, you have, and it's a very smart thing to do that, if you have some product, one thing is the Indian government is buying, and even if we don't buy, if we are able to sell, what happens with that money? All our companies like Zen, all the money that they get, what do? They typically reinvest in the R&D. So this is the virtuous cycle that happened. You do more R&D, your product become number one in the world. You do number one, you have a unbeatable lead with the second player. So that is the whole point. I think so. The government of India is right on track. We are getting a lot of encouragement from embassies, from the government here. So even though we would want it much faster, there are some slower clearances that have started in the recent times. But earlier, when Mr. Parikar was there, the rule was 2 weeks and 4 weeks for the first time, 2 weeks for the second time.
You're saying there is some change in the
So
system?
it is sometimes it's taking a few months for a clearance.
Few
to come.
months.
Yeah.
From earlier 2 to 4 weeks, it's
240,
taking
yeah, it is taking
months.
months. Yeah, there is some delays these days.
So suddenly it struck me that while you're making simulators for the Navy, for the Army, the Air Force is something which has been left out.
Yeah.
And the Air Force, it's the foreign companies which have a huge play in
Yeah.
the Air Force setup. So what is your plan for the Air Force?
So we are looking to get into Air Force. We have
Yeah.
started working in that direction. What some simulators we are already bidding for also.
Okay.
And I think
What simulators are these, sir?
So these are fighter aircrafts. I don't want to name them
Okay.
because of the
Yeah.
thing. But not only in India, but even overseas, we are we are trying to bid for some contracts. Again, the thing is the technology is already there with us. The visuals, even the motion platform is our own patented motion platform. As you know, we have applied for more than 200 patents. Out of them, almost 90 patents have been granted already. So
90 patents?
Yes, have been granted. 200 have been applied for,
Wow.
and they will subsequently come. So we are very, very IP-rich company and IP-focused, R&D-focused company. So to create a Air Force-related simulator from this technology is very easy for us.
Okay, and that's something that you are
We
focusing
are
on.
actually doing now.
And you've already bid for the Air Force, Indian Air
Some
Force
Air Force
requirements.
related, not with the Air Force, but aircraft simulators. With
Aircraft
some other
simulators
thing.
that is there. So now, you were talking about the whole funding issue, and you were talking about this new fund that the Defense Minister is talking about. Tell our viewers more about it. What is it that the government should really do with that fund?
So one thing is this, the RDI fund, the Research Development and Innovation Fund, the government has floated for deep tech. That's almost 1 lakh crores. So in that, this is 20,000 into 5 years. So what we are suggesting is that, in that there will be defense as one of the mainstays.
Naturally.
So there are a lot of companies which have R&D capabilities to work on long-term projects. Now, there is no long-term funding actually available either for self-funding or for, from the government. So, government should identify these Pareto technologies, which I say 5 years from now, with 20% of the technology that will have 80% impact. And you may be fairly guessing it, maybe you may be wrong in one or two, but fairly you should be right on that. So, you start funding these guys and say, boss, you develop these particular technologies so that in 5 years' time, we can become number one in that. In the world. So, and this is typically some funding, 50% funding is done by the fund. Another 25-30% can be done, or even 50 up to 50% can be done like private companies like Zen to some third party who do the R&D all throughout. So, I think that is our fastest way to leverage this RDI fund to make India number one in defense.
Because as the viewers would agree, this is some tremendous work that is happening here in Hyderabad. And as you can see, viewers, from a company that was started in 1993 as a small arms simulation company, has now grown into such a large company and is still growing. And hopefully, we will have some good news coming on that front very soon on the print. This is Snehesh Alex Philip signing off with video journalist Mohhamad Hammad here at the Zen manufacturing facility in Hyderabad.